the years, I've learned many things from interaction with teachers of preaching, reading books on preaching, hearing sermons myself, consulting with colleagues. I remember from Barbara Lundblad, the Lutheran professor of preaching, the idea of putting names on several chairs in the room where one is preparing to preach and imagining each of those people hearing the sermon and imagining their response to it. Imagining how a child or an older person, a single person, a married person, a rich person, a poor person might respond to this particular sermon. I have found that advice so helpful over the years, so that when I'm preparing to preach a sermon on joy, I imagine how that woman who just lost her beloved husband of 50 years last week might hear this sermon. Might she feel that I have taken away her permission to grieve? And how might I speak to a deeper sense of joy? If I'm preparing to preach a sermon on generosity, how will the person who just lost their job hear what I'm saying? Will they feel discounted or filled with guilt? And how might I express the call to generosity in a way that would invite them to consider generosity in a new way in light of their changed circumstances? If I'm preaching a sermon on justice, how will that be heard by the person who feels helpless in their job, working for a company that they feel is engaging in unjust actions? How will it inspire and empower rather than simply demoralize or deflate their sense of living as a person of faith? If I'm preaching a sermon on social action, how will the 85-year-old man who has a difficult time even getting out and coming to church hear this particular sermon? How can he participate in what the gospel is challenging us to do with his limited physical resources? There must always be good news. There must always be an opportunity to respond. No matter who you are or what your situation is. And I'm very conscious of that in my preparation for preaching. I'm conscious as well of the presence of children and how they may or may not be included as true members of the community in worship. From Tom Truger, a Methodist preaching professor out of Denver, I learned to preach without a manuscript, which has been a great treasure for me. It's a difficult challenge sometimes, but I find it ultimately to be extremely enriching and helpful in preparing to preach. Preaching is an oral event. It is not a literary or written event. And there are many wonderful sermons written that are wonderful things to read. They have complex turns of phrases, complex ideas. Not that my preaching doesn't include complexity, but I try hard to create a rhythm and a pattern and a focus in a sermon that is truly an oral event, that people can put something of it in their memory and can live with it throughout the week.